You think silence makes you invisible, but the truth is the exact opposite. Silence is the torch that sets fire to the shadows he hides in. When you withdraw your voice, when you withhold the constant reassurance his ego feeds on, the hunter within him begins to stir. Men are not awakened by abundance. They are shaken awake by the abyss left when what they counted on disappears. Silence is not absence. It is presence intensified, a mirror reflecting his hunger back at him until he can no longer escape it. A woman who understands the language of silence becomes untouchable. She no longer needs to fight for recognition because her stillness forces him into confrontation with himself. Jung knew that within every man lies a hunter, but this hunter is not always noble. Sometimes he lurks, waiting for weakness, thriving on submission. Yet when faced with the high priestess, cloaked in quiet mystery, the shadow inside him does not remain dormant. It rises, restless, compelled to pursue what cannot be possessed. And here lies the paradox. The less you reveal, the more he projects. The silence becomes a canvas, and he paints you with the colors of his own unspoken desire, fear, and longing. The feminine power of silence is not passive. It is deliberate. It creates a void, and voids are unbearable to the masculine psyche. He will fill it with fantasies, with projections, with shadowed cravings. Your restraint is the spark that ignites his chase. He begins to question himself. Why is she not seeking me? Why is she not soothing me? Why does her gaze remain elsewhere? And beneath those questions is a primal dread. Perhaps he was never enough to begin with. That dread is what awakens the hunter. Not comfort, not validation, but silence. Imagine a forest at dusk. The air is thick, every sound magnified. A hunter waits, but the prey does not move. No rustle of leaves, no snapping of twigs, only silence. The hunter grows restless. His instincts sharpen, his breath shortens. The absence of sound is not peace, it is tension. And in that tension, the hunt begins. This is what your silence does. You become the forest, still and impenetrable, while his instincts burn against the quiet. He cannot rest until he knows, until he breaks the silence, until he captures what eludes him. Yet the true secret is this: the silence is never about him. It is your weapon, your sanctuary, your initiation into sovereignty. When you stop feeding the noise, you reclaim your center. You are no longer a reflection of his moods or his needs. You are the high priestess seated between the black and white pillars, veiled, holding mysteries he cannot touch. This silence is not emptiness, it is fullness contained. It whispers, I choose when to speak, I choose when to give, I choose when to be known. And so he circles, restless, his shadow pushing him toward you. But the more he reaches, the more he feels the chasm between his hunger and your stillness. It terrifies him, it excites him, it awakens something primal, the realization that he is no longer in control of the narrative. You are. Silence is not submission, it is dominance without lifting a finger. It is the refusal to explain, to justify, to soften. It is the audacity to let him sit with his own discomfort. Many will not endure this test. Some men will flee from the silence, unable to face the echo of their own inadequacy. Let them. Their retreat reveals their weakness. But the man who is truly stirred by the shadow, who feels the sting of absence and is brave enough to stay, he will be transformed. For he is not only chasing you, he is chasing the parts of himself he has long denied. The silence you embody does not only awaken his hunter, it confronts him with his shadow. And that confrontation can either break him or build him. So the question becomes, are you willing to wield this silence? To step back from the constant noise, the explanations, the small reassurances that keep him comfortable but keep you bound? Are you willing to watch how he moves when you no longer move toward him? Can you trust the stillness enough to see who he becomes when the veil falls between you? What happens when you stop filling the silence and let him hear the roar inside his own shadow? Silence is not empty, it is a force. And the moment you step into it, the air between you and him shifts. His body may remain still, but inside him something unsettled begins to stir. It is the restlessness of a man stripped of his illusions, the gnawing sensation that the woman before him has vanished into a dimension he cannot access. Silence confronts him with the truth. The power he thought he held was always borrowed, sustained by your constant energy, your offerings of words, your steady light. Now, without them, he is left alone with his shadow, and it is louder than thunder. This is where the archetype of the high priestess reigns supreme. She is not loud, she is not forceful, yet her silence commands. Her presence is a veil, inviting yet impenetrable. She holds the keys to mysteries he both craves and fears. In her quiet, she reveals nothing, and in revealing nothing, she reveals everything. For the masculine psyche cannot tolerate the unknown. It must hunt it, conquer it, decode it. Jung knew this hunger well. The pursuit of the anima, the inner feminine, is often veiled in projection, a desperate chase after something that feels both divine and dangerous. When you embody silence, you awaken this hunger. And yet silence is not about games. It is not about manipulation or withholding for the sake of cruelty. It is an alchemy. It turns absence into mirror, restraint into fire. When you stop filling every moment with words, when you stop explaining yourself, defending yourself, softening your edges, you are not taking something away from him. You are returning something to yourself. Your energy, your sacredness, your right to remain whole. Silence becomes the temple in which you remember who you are when no one else is looking. For the hunter in his shadow is not merely chasing you. He is chasing the pieces of himself buried in darkness. Your silence forces him to feel them. It cracks the surface of his illusions, that he is in control, that he is desired without question, that he is the one who decides. Suddenly he is exposed. Suddenly he is searching for answers that do not come. Silence is not passive resistance. It is a crucible. It burns away falsehood. It awakens both his hunger and his fear. Picture a man standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into a valley swallowed in mist. He knows something is there, moving, breathing, alive, but he cannot see it. He feels the weight of it in the silence, and it drives him mad. This is the experience of facing a woman who has embraced her high priestess energy. You are the mist, the hidden valley, the unseen truth. He cannot own it, cannot define it, cannot cage it. He can only step closer, risk falling, or turn back in frustration. And that choice is his initiation. What you must understand is that silence is not merely a tactic in attraction, it is initiation into power. For in silence, you break the pattern of chasing. You allow the masculine to reveal itself without interference. You no longer carry the burden of making him comfortable. You no longer dilute your presence to ease his insecurity. You stand as you are, veiled, untouchable, sovereign. And in that stance, you call forth the truth of who he is. Some will falter, some will rise, but all will be unmasked. Do not underestimate how radical this act is. In a world that demands women to be endlessly giving, endlessly explaining, endlessly accessible, silence is rebellion. It is refusal. It is the declaration, I will not hand you the map to me. You must earn it. You must walk the labyrinth on your own. And only those who are brave enough to endure the silence, who can bear the tension of not knowing, will find the center. Silence becomes both test and threshold. So when you hold your silence, do not mistake his agitation for failure. It is proof of awakening. The hunter is restless because the shadow has been stirred. The projections collapse, the illusions break, and in their place rises a raw hunger to know what lies behind the veil. That hunger is the spark of transformation, not just in him, but in you. For every time you resist the urge to explain, to justify, to chase, you step deeper into your own sovereignty. The question lingers: how long can you hold the silence without breaking it? How long can you let him circle the veil, restless, without stepping out to ease his fear? For the longer you remain, the clearer his truth will become. Can you bear the weight of your own mystery long enough to let him face the truth of his shadow? There comes a moment when silence ceases to be absence and becomes a mirror. He looks into it and finds not you, but himself, fragmented, restless, uncertain. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the part of the psyche buried beneath pride and denial. Silence strips away the distractions, the noise that covers it, and forces him into contact with what he does not want to see. Your stillness, your refusal to fill the space, compels him to hear the voices he has silenced within himself. That is why he cannot look away. That is why he cannot rest. And here is the paradox. The hunter believes he is chasing you, yet in truth he is chasing his own reflection. You are the high priestess, veiled, unknowable, seated in a temple of quiet. He longs to lift the veil, to decode your silence, to claim what he does not understand. But every step he takes deeper into that pursuit draws him not toward you but toward himself. His shadow rises, jealousy, fear, desire, anger, all surfacing in the tension your silence creates. He must either face them or retreat. Either way, he has already been changed. For the feminine, silence does not coddle, does not reassure, does not soften the jaded edges of his insecurity. It demands courage. It demands confrontation. It says, if you want to meet me, you must first meet yourself. And this terrifies him because what if in meeting himself he discovers he is not enough? What if the silence reveals a truth he cannot control? That terror is the true hunt, not for you, but for his own soul. Notice what happens when you do not rush to fill the silence. At first, there is discomfort, a scratching at the edges of his composure. He may test you, provoke you, seek some reaction to confirm his control. Yet when you remain still, when you hold the veil, the discomfort transforms into obsession. He begins to imagine, to project, to create stories about what your silence means. You become the blank page where his unconscious writes. And in this way, silence is not absence. It is the most magnetic presence of all. But silence also liberates you. It frees you from the endless loop of explanation and persuasion. It frees you from the compulsion to chase, to prove, to soothe. In silence, you return to yourself, to your own knowing. You become untouchable not because you are distant, but because you are rooted. Like the high priestess, you do not need to speak to command reverence. Your stillness alone evokes it. You no longer hand him your energy on demand. You let him earn his way to the threshold, and whether he enters or flees becomes his choice, not your loss. Consider the myth of Persephone taken into the underworld, her silence holding mysteries even Hades could not unravel. She was not powerless. Her silence gave her dominion in realms he could not enter without her consent. In the same way, your silence does not make you the prey. It makes you the gatekeeper. You decide when to open, when to reveal, when to allow. And until that moment, the hunter is left circling the door of a temple that does not yield to force. Some men will rage against the silence, their pride shattered by what they cannot command. Others will retreat, preferring the comfort of women who give freely what costs them nothing. But the few who endure, who let the silence strip them of ego and force them into truth, those are the ones who approach you not as conquerors but as seekers. And it is in meeting the seeker, not the hunter, that the true union can begin. Your silence does not just awaken his pursuit. It reveals the measure of the man. Will he be consumed by shadow, or will he rise to meet the depth you hold? The answer is found not in what you give, but in what you withhold. Every moment of silence is a test, a crucible, a mirror. And as you hold it, you step deeper into your power, for silence is sovereignty made audible. So the question unfolds before you. Do you dare to let him face himself in the silence you guard? Do you dare to remain veiled until his shadow either devours him or transforms him? The silence stretches, and what began as discomfort now becomes a storm. In that storm, he feels the loss of certainty, the trembling of control, the unraveling of the illusion that he is the center of your orbit. This is the hidden violence of silence. It dismantles his ego not with words, not with arguments but with absence. Absence is sharper than accusation. Absence is the blade that cuts without touch. In silence, you reveal that you are not tethered to his validation. You are whole, and wholeness is what terrifies him most. Jung spoke of the anima as the inner feminine, the soul image every man projects onto women. When you fall silent, you break the spell of that projection. You refuse to perform the role he has cast you in, and suddenly the illusion collapses. He cannot see you clearly, so he reaches deeper, trying to force the image back into focus. Yet the more he grasps, the more it slips away. This awakens the hunter, not in triumph, but in desperation. He is no longer chasing you. He is chasing the vanishing reflection of his own anima. And that chase is endless, for silence never gives him the reassurance he craves. There is a cruel mercy in this, for when the projection shatters, he is faced with reality, not the fantasy of who he thought you were, but the depth of who you are. This depth cannot be consumed, cannot be owned. It must be revered. Silence insists on reverence. Silence insists that he step beyond hunger and confront humility. Only then can he begin to see not just a woman, but a mystery, a presence that stands equal, not subservient. You, meanwhile, are not idle in this silence. You are not waiting, not calculating. You are dwelling within yourself, tending to the sacred flame of sovereignty. The high priestess holds her book closed because she knows not all knowledge is to be shared freely. She knows that wisdom must be earned, that mystery itself is power. In your silence, you embody this truth. You say without words, I am not here to be consumed. I am here to be witnessed, and only those who can withstand the silence may witness me. Think of what? Pooled deep in a hidden cave. The man who stumbles upon it may thirst, may yearn to drink, but if he rushes in without reverence, the water will remain out of reach. The silence is that cave. It is cool, vast, echoing. It holds secrets he cannot rush, cannot demand. He must kneel. He must slow his breath. He must learn patience. The hunter is forced to become a seeker, or else he remains lost in his shadow. And so the question is not whether he will awaken. He will. Silence makes sure of it. The real question is how he will respond once awakened. Will he rage against the veil, tearing at it until he destroys the bond entirely? Or will he surrender to the tension, learning to sit with the mystery instead of breaking it? This is the crucible your silence builds. It separates the men who need control from the men who are ready for truth. There is temptation in breaking the silence too soon. The urge to comfort, to clarify, to mend his agitation. Yet every time you do, you give away the very power the silence offered you. Power is not found in endless words, in over-explaining yourself into exhaustion. Power is found in restraint, in the willingness to endure the space between question and answer, in the courage to let him feel the abyss without rushing to fill it. This abyss is not your enemy. It is the place where transformation lives. For only in the abyss do masks fall, shadows rise, and truths surface. Your silence is the abyss he must enter if he wishes to find you. And in that abyss, he may find not only you but himself, stripped, raw, and unmasked. So hold it. Hold the veil. Hold the temple doors closed a little longer. Let the silence breathe until it becomes unbearable, until the hunter inside him either breaks or becomes something new. The question remains, can you trust that the abyss of your silence is not emptiness, but the very field where power is born? Silence, when fully inhabited, ceases to be a tactic and becomes a throne. From this throne, you no longer negotiate your worth. You no longer scramble to prove, to persuade, to soothe. You simply exist in your fullness, untouchable and whole, and it is from this wholeness that the true hunt begins. For the hunter cannot stalk what lies in submission. He only awakens when faced with something beyond his grasp. Your silence is the signal flare, igniting the primal truth he has tried to bury. That control was never his. That possession is an illusion, that desire without mastery of self leads only to shadow. In this silence, the veil of the high priestess thickens. She does not reveal her secrets to the impatient, nor does she reward the unworthy. She waits, not in passivity but in command, watching how each man responds to the weight of mystery. Some will rage, their pride shattering as they beat against the locked gates of the temple. Others will collapse into apathy, retreating to easier conquests, shallow waters where the depths do not drown them. But the rare few, those who sense that within the silence lies initiation, will endure. They will pace, they will question, they will burn until they finally kneel at the threshold, not in defeat but in reverence. Jung understood that silence does not only awaken projection, it awakens individuation. When he is denied the constant reassurance of your voice, your giving, your light, he is forced to confront the parts of himself that remain unclaimed. Anger rises, jealousy whispers, fear gnaws, yet in those very shadows is the path toward wholeness. You are not leading him with words, you are leading him by absence. Silence is the crucible that either destroys his illusions or tempers him into something truer. For you, silence is not empty. It is the inner sanctum where your own knowing deepens. Every moment you refuse to chase, you feel your own ground solidify. Every question you leave unanswered, you feel your worth harden into something untouchable. You are no longer defined by his pursuit or his retreat. You are not the prey. You are the terrain itself, the forest, the mist, the temple. Hunters come and go, but the land remains eternal, sovereign, unmoved. Imagine the moment he finally breaks under the weight of it. His pride fractures. His voice trembles as he reaches for words that once came easily but now feel fragile, stripped of power. In that moment, he is not speaking to control you. He is speaking to save himself. He has faced the silence and realized that it does not bow to him, that it belongs to you, and that only in reverence will the gates open. This is the transformation silence brings. The shift from domination to devotion, from projection to presence, from hunter to seeker. But whether he makes that shift is not your responsibility. Silence reveals, but it does not rescue. It exposes the man before you in raw truth. And sometimes the truth is that he cannot meet you. He cannot face his shadow. He cannot endure the silence. Then you will see him retreat and you will know. It was not you who lost, but he who could not rise. Your silence becomes the sieve that filters the weak from the strong, the shallow from the worthy. And in this, silence saves you from wasting your fire on those who were never meant to hold it. The high priestess does not chase those who flee her temple. She returns to her book, her veil, her quiet, knowing that the few who are ready will find their way back, purified by their own shadows. Silence is not only a mirror for him, it is a vow you make to yourself. Never again will you hand over your worth for scraps of validation. Never again will you dilute your mystery to soothe another's insecurity. The silence becomes your shield, your crown, your initiation. And from it rises a deeper question, one that cuts sharper than desire, sharper than fear. When the hunter trembles before the silence, do you have the strength to remain veiled, to remain sovereign, to remain untouchable? There is a threshold every woman reaches when she no longer fears the silence but wields it. At first, silence feels like loss, the loss of connection, of validation, of his attention. The urge to break it presses against your ribs like a scream. Yet when you resist, when you sit in the unbearable tension and let it breathe, something profound awakens inside you. The silence that once felt like emptiness becomes sanctuary. What was absence transforms into power. You discover that your presence does not require explanation, that your worth is not proved by sound, that the deepest truths are spoken without a single word. For him, this transformation is shattering. The man who has built his identity on control suddenly finds the ground beneath him dissolving. He thought himself the pursuer, the one with the bow drawn, the hunter in command. But now he sees that the prey has vanished into mist, that the forest itself is alive, watching him, silent and unmoving. His instincts rage, his pride burns, his shadow stretches long in the silence you hold. And he must ask himself, am I truly the hunter, or am I the hunted by my own unclaimed fears? Jung knew that the shadow never disappears, it only waits for confrontation. Your silence forces this confrontation. Every unanswered question, every withheld reassurance, every pause where words once rushed forth, these become doorways into his shadow. He feels jealousy where before he felt certainty. He feels longing where before he felt ownership. He feels fear where before he felt control. The silence awakens not just the hunter but the ghosts he buried. And it is in this awakening that his mask begins to crack. You, meanwhile, sit in a different fire. The silence tests you as much as it tests him. It whispers, will you break? Will you speak too soon? Will you hand back the power you reclaimed? But as you hold it longer, you feel the shift. You are no longer reacting to his movements, no longer orbiting his needs. You are the axis now. The silence teaches you sovereignty. It teaches you that you do not need to be chosen to be valuable. You do not need to be pursued to be alive. You are already whole, already radiant, already seated upon your throne. The high priestess archetype reveals herself fully here. She is not cruel, but neither is she careless with her secrets. She understands that what is precious must be protected. Her silence is not coldness, it is discernment. She withholds not because she fears rejection, but because she knows her worth is not for every hand that reaches. In this way, silence becomes the veil that guards the sacred, ensuring that only those who honor it may enter. And so, as you embody this, your silence ceases to be a test for him alone. It becomes a vow to yourself, a promise never to betray your own mystery again. The man who rises to meet this silence undergoes a kind of death. The ego that once demanded possession cannot survive here. In its place must be born humility, patience, reverence. He learns to approach not as hunter but as seeker. He learns that silence cannot be conquered, it must be entered with surrender. This is the initiation Jung hinted at, the integration of shadow, the confrontation with the anima, the birth of something whole. And yet, whether he accepts this initiation is not your burden. Silence reveals all. His choice is his own. You may watch some turn away, unable to bear the weight. Let them go. For their retreat is not your failure, it is your liberation. Others may rage, hurl words like arrows to pierce the silence, desperate to drag you back into noise. Do not yield. For their rage is proof that the silence has already done its work, exposing the fragile ego beneath. And a rare few will stay, trembling but steady, willing to endure the silence long enough to meet the truth on the other side. Those few are worthy not because they conquered you, but because they conquered themselves. This is the gift silence brings. It shows you who stands and who flees, who reveres and who consumes, who seeks truth and who clings to illusion. It saves you from giving your essence to those unprepared for it, and it returns you to yourself, whole, sovereign, untouchable. So the silence asks you now, when he falters before the veil, when the shadow claws at his chest, when the hunt burns within him, will you hold the silence or will you break it? Silence is the crucible where illusions burn. In its stillness, he learns that the chase is not outward but inward, that the prey he hunts is the very soul he abandoned in his rush to dominate. And yet, the silence is not for him alone. It is also the fire in which you are reforged. Every heartbeat you spend withholding your words, every moment you resist the urge to soothe his insecurity, you reclaim what was scattered. You gather yourself whole. You feel the weight of your own presence settle like a crown. What once felt like emptiness now feels like sovereignty. He cannot escape what your silence awakens. At first, it unsettles him. He tells himself he doesn't care, that your stillness is meaningless, but shadows are loud in quiet rooms. His mind begins to replay your absence like a haunting. He wonders what you are thinking, what you are feeling, what you are withholding. He fills the silence with projections. Perhaps you are losing interest, perhaps you have found another, perhaps you are no longer under his spell. None of these stories are true, yet all are born from the mirror your silence holds to his own fears. This is why silence is never passive. It does not drift aimlessly, it cuts with precision. Words can be deflected, twisted, dismissed. Silence cannot. It seeps into him, magnifying his doubts, forcing him to wrestle with the shadows he buried. Jung knew that projection is unbearable when the object of projection refuses to play along. When you do not hand him the script, he is left to face the theater of his own unconscious. And in that theater, he is both actor and audience, exposed and unmasked. Yet silence also demands of you a brutal courage. To hold it is to resist the ancient conditioning that told women to fill space, to please, to soften the edges of male discomfort. It asks you to sit in the storm, to endure the tension of not being understood, to withstand the temptation of breaking the spell too soon. Silence is not weakness. It is the sharpest blade, but only in the hands of one willing to wield it without trembling. The high priestess does not waver. She waits. She knows the difference between what is urgent and what is true. Consider the image of a lion pacing outside the gates of a temple. His strength is undeniable, his hunger fierce. But the temple does not open for brute force. It does not respond to roars. It yields only to stillness, to reverence, to patience. Your silence is that temple. The men who roar, who claw at the door in anger, reveal themselves as unworthy. The ones who retreat, unwilling to endure the weight, reveal their weakness. And the rare one who kneels, quiet, humbled by the mystery, he is the one who learns the language of the silence. He is the one who can enter. This transformation does not guarantee that every hunter becomes a seeker, nor that every shadow integrates into light. But it guarantees clarity. For the silence reveals what words could never extract, who he is when stripped of control, when denied his comforts, when faced with the unknown. And clarity is freedom. It frees you from illusions, from wasted energy, from giving yourself to men who cannot rise. So the silence whispers its final lesson. It is not about what you withhold from him, but about what you restore to yourself. Each moment of quiet is a return to dignity, a return to mystery, a return to the truth that your worth is not contingent upon noise, performance, or pursuit. In silence, you remember. You are not the hunted, you are the fire he seeks in the dark, the temple he cannot storm, the secret that will not betray itself. And now the silence places its question before you like a key upon the altar. When the moment arrives and he trembles, restless in the void you have created, will you hand him the answer? Or will you let him earn the right to touch the mystery? Silence is not the absence of power. It is its purest form. When all words are stripped away, when explanations are silenced, when performance ends, what remains is essence, raw, undeniable, sovereign. In that essence, you discover the truth Jung sought to unearth. Power is not in conquest, but in wholeness. The hunter may pace, claw, and circle, but he cannot enter unless the gatekeeper allows it, and the gatekeeper is you. To him, the silence grows unbearable. It gnaws at the edges of his pride, echoing louder than any spoken refusal. He cannot argue with it, cannot bend it, cannot force it to yield. Words would give him foothold, would open the door to justification and control. Silence denies him all of that. It demands that he sit with his unease, with the gnawing suspicion that the universe does not orbit around him. In the emptiness, his ego trembles. The hunter awakens, but what he pursues is no longer you. It is the fragile illusion of his own supremacy slipping from his grasp. For you, the silence is revelation. You watch him reveal himself without lifting a finger. In his restlessness, you see his fear. In his anger, you see his shadow. In his patience, perhaps, you glimpse his growth. Silence becomes your oracle, showing you truth without deception. You no longer need to dissect his words or cling to his promises. The way he moves through silence tells you everything. It is the most honest language there is. And so the high priestess archetype stands tall within you. She is not aloof by accident, not detached by weakness. She is veiled because she knows her value. She knows not every seeker is ready. Her silence is the threshold that separates the profane from the sacred, the unready from the worthy. You become her living vessel, and in that embodiment you are no longer swayed by noise. You do not scramble for answers. You do not rush to fill the space. You let the silence stretch until only the truth remains standing. This is where the transformation completes itself, not in him but in you. For while the hunter wrestles with his shadow, you are no longer caught in the snare of his chase. You are not the prey. You are not even the prize. You are the axis, the unmovable center. Men may enter and leave, they may rage or kneel, but you remain. Silence crowns you with the realization that worth was never something to be granted. It was always there, waiting for you to claim it. And when you claim it, everything shifts. The dynamic reverses. You no longer wonder if he will choose you. You ask instead, is he worthy of choosing? Will he endure the silence without breaking? Will he kneel at the threshold without trying to force his way in? Will he confront his shadow rather than project it onto you? Silence draws out these answers more clearly than words ever could. And once you see them, you cannot unsee. In the end, silence is not a weapon against men. It is a covenant with yourself. A vow that you will no longer betray your mystery, no longer hand your worth to those who cannot hold it, no longer chase what was never yours to begin with. Silence is not the void, it is the voice of your deepest knowing. It is the language of sovereignty. It is the breath of the high priestess whispering through you. You do not chase, you choose. So let the silence linger. Let the hunter burn in the shadows it awakens. Let him face himself in the abyss. For whether he rises or flees, whether he transforms or collapses, you will remain whole. And in that wholeness lies the final revelation. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. Leave a comment below about the moment you realized your worth doesn't depend on anyone else.